You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are coming to you from the Sun Prairie Community Radio Studios, underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. My name is James Kademan, business coach at Draw In Customers Business Coaching and author of the Bold Business Book. Today we are welcoming / preparing to learn from Briana Frank of Tree Health Management. Briana, how are you feeling today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Glad to have you joining us here today. Why don't you tell us what you do, Briana?
I am a consulting arborist. I own a business called Tree Health Management.
All right.
So we are essentially tree preservationists.
Tree preservationist. How authentic sounding.
It does sound authentic. But we are in the business of maintaining and caring for trees.
All right. And how many employees do you have?
Right now we have 3 employees.
Nice. All right. And how long have you been in business?
I've been in business for 6 years.
Holy cow, 6 years. Nice. How does it feel?
How does it feel? Today it feels great.
All right.
Nice weather. And
Sure.
I get to go spend a little time outside with trees
Nice.
and clients. So.
All right. So how long have you been doing this, the tree preservationist?
Well, I have been a tree care expert for almost 14 years.
Holy
Certified
cow.
arborist for 13 years.
Nice.
So I've been doing this for a while.
All right. So when did you decide to go off on your own?
In 2012.
All right. And what helped you with that decision?
Well, I wasn't the best employee. I really wanted to do things my way.
Okay.
And it was really just being able to create my own culture.
Nice.
And business that enticed me.
All right. Did you work for one place that entire time before you started your business, or?
No, I worked for a couple different companies in the area.
So were you able to learn stuff, kind of what to do and what maybe not to do?
I was able to learn a bit. I think I was always a person that filled my shoes really fast and wanted to expand.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes those restrictions were what pushed me into wanting to do things my way.
Sure. Okay. That's interesting that you say that, because now that I'm thinking about this, I had my printer repair company, right? Mm-hmm. And before that, I worked for a company that was fixing printers. And I felt like it was a 2-rung ladder. It was you got the job, and then you got good at the job, and then that was kind of where you were. Because there was a finite level to where nobody cared how well you fixed their machine, right?
Right.
After that, it's not like you made it make toast or anything. Like it's just still printing out a piece of paper. So it's as good, or the job itself is as good as you were going to be at it, right? To a point. So I'm wondering if maybe with tree care it was the same situation, right? If you want to take care of a tree, there has to be a finite point or a kind of a law of diminishing returns where you can't get better at the job?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No, in that there's so many, because trees are living things, right?
Sure.
Printers are like, you have your printer model and there's like
Very
a
inanimate
finite thing that could be wrong with it.
Yes.
But with trees and tree care, trees have made a liar out of me more than once.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And they're living organisms.
Okay.
So I think it's a lot of the diagnosis and treatments for trees that we do. Mm-hmm. They're constantly changing, and our industry is, traditionally one that hasn't had a lot of money and funding behind it.
Okay.
We recently have, because of things like emerald ash borer, et cetera, that have really pushed a lot of funding into different research opportunities.
When you say funding, you mean specifically from the consumer?
From the consumer and from the federal government and state agencies, because it's essentially kind of a natural resource disaster.
Sure.
In that, it took a lot of preparing and able to, in order for people to manage this resource properly.
All right.
So we learned a ton about tree care and a ton about protocols and what works and what doesn't work. And, it flipped a lot of what we thought we knew over on its head.
All right.
So in that sense, everything that I do is really different now than it was 5 years ago.
Really?
So I think
that recent?
Yeah, that's part of why I love working in this industry. It's challenging, and there's always something to learn. Like, I don't put my books down for a second.
Sure.
Because I'm always running across new situations in the field too.
Okay. And the idea is that there's different diseases or bugs, or
That's
just
correct.
different treatments?
There's different diseases and bugs. There's different elements. Our weather today isn't the same as it was
Very
5 years
safe
ago
to
at
say.
this time. So you're trying to keep yourself with and a step ahead of what's happening in nature and trying to predict what outcomes are going to be
Sure.
for your clients in order to properly prepare living things on their
Sure.
properties.
Sure. Just to clue people in if they're listening to this later, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's late January in Wisconsin, and there's not much snow, which is just weird.
It is weird, and it's dangerous because when we don't have proper snow to insulate buds and roots,
Mm-hmm.
then we can have issues with different types of root rot and anaerobic conditions in the soil. So
Interesting.
there's a lot of things that will change this season based on what happens now and
Sure.
when we start to have spring.
All right. Here I was getting all excited that I wouldn't have to shovel, hoping it was a good thing.
Yeah, salt.
Salt. Okay. Nice. All right. All right. So let's get into kind of a little bit of the business. You are on your own, or do you have a business partner?
I do have a business partner.
Okay. Who's that?
Nathan Marty.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay. And how did you get tied up with Nathan?
Well, Nathan's also my life's partner.
All right.
So
There's
how did
that.
he get tied up with me?
Fair,
Would be a
fair.
better question.
Maybe on both ends, right?
Really, it started when we started to get really busy,
Okay.
and he started to help.
All
And
right.
I think he really loved being outside and being with. He had a degree in sales and marketing from UW Milwaukee,
Oh, nice.
so
Okay.
he didn't really, he didn't have any education in the outdoors, but
Sure.
he certainly was an enthusiast.
Okay.
So he started working in the business when we got busy just basically out of necessity, and then he really loved it and kind of just took off with it.
Nice.
And now he really generally manages the business.
Okay. So he's been your partner for how long? Business partner for how long?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. Wow. All right. And I always ask people that are, because it's oddly enough,
Mhm.
we have people that are both professional partners as well as call it life partners, whatever,
Sure.
outside of work. And that just blows my mind because I swear to God, my wife would kill me if I worked with her or had any connection with business with her. So
She might.
how, or maybe even outside of that. So how do you shut it off? How do you shut work off when you guys go home at night and you're having dinner or whatever?
A lot of times we don't.
Okay. All right.
It comes up all the time.
Sure.
But I think, there's times when if we are deciding to do something with the kids or
Mm-hmm.
have dinner where we kind of have some internal rules that
Sure.
we're talking about other things,
All
but
right.
neither of us really mind talking about trees
Gotcha. Okay.
or, bettering the business or
Sure.
what we should do next. I think
All
it's
right.
it's fun for us.
Do you have kids?
We do have two.
Okay. Do
Mhm.
they kind of roll their eyes when you guys start talking business?
Nope, they love it.
No,
well,
oh,
I
really?
should say to an extent.
All right. Nice. You love this, right? What is your least favorite thing about owning your business?
My least favorite thing.
Yeah.
I think probably just work-life balance
Mm.
is hard to maintain. I
Sure.
think you'd probably hear that from just about any small business owner,
Yeah, even the big ones.
even
Yep.
the big ones.
Mhm.
So yeah, just keeping, especially when we're in super high season,
Sure.
and just knowing when when I first started my business, I thought there was nothing wrong with just working all the time
Sure.
and constantly trying to achieve goals within the business.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really. Everybody told me what burnout was, and I just didn't really
Sure.
identify with that until it happened.
Sure. Interesting.
So I think it's if you're one of the lucky few that can understand from other people's actions that you
Mhm.
need a balance
Sure.
and not have to discover that on your own.
Sure.
I think you'd be steps ahead.
So what do you do for fun?
What do we do for fun? We travel a
Okay.
bit.
Okay.
I love to travel, and if I don't get to travel, I get moody.
I feel the same way about food.
There's a lot of people that feel that way about food. But we're really into being parents, and we love a perfect day for us is just hanging out with our kids and
Nice.
taking a bike ride on the bike path and going to get ice cream.
Sure. How old are your kids?
6 and 1 just turned 8.
6 and 8. Okay, so if I understand this correctly, you had a 2-year-old and a kid on the way when you started your business? Give or take?
Give or take.
Okay.
No, Millie was born, so.
Okay.
Mhm.
So less than 1 year old?
Right.
Okay. So a 2-3-ish-year-old and a less than 1-year-old.
Yes,
you're
they
like,
were
hey, let's start a business. This sounds great.
It does sound a little insane.
I
right
would
now,
say so.
but
Sure. Would I be wrong in saying that?
I've always been I've always stacked things very high on the plate.
Okay.
That's my comfort zone.
All right. That's fair. That's
Mhm.
completely fair. So what is your favorite part about business?
My favorite part about business, I get to do and design what I like to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's exhilarating when it goes right,
Sure.
and it's when things happen, and you made a dream become
Mhm.
reality. I don't think there's any other feeling like it.
No, very true. Very true. I can definitely agree with that. Were you Nathan, this guy's name?
Mm-hmm.
Was he with you at the time that you started your business?
He was.
Okay, and how did he feel about you starting your business?
He was super encouraging and
Okay.
had no idea what we were getting into, so
That's
it
awesome.
was all great.
All right, this is fantastic. It's just like going to a restaurant, right?
Right.
At what point did you hire employees?
Well, so we started out, we actually had more partners initially when we started our business.
Okay.
And all of the partners kind of worked in the business.
Gotcha.
So we didn't
Okay.
really have a need for employees until, everybody kind of had a change of venue and did different things after
Sure.
a year or two. So we had to bring employees on. I'd say our first employee was actually the year after we started. So
Okay.
2013 and
Okay.
2014, we started bringing on more employees.
All right. Was it a challenge to find employees?
It was.
Okay.
It was, especially on the administrative side of things.
Sure.
I'm very well connected in the tree world, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a really great idea, and had a really great idea then, of exactly what I needed as far as skill set.
Sure.
But in order to run the business itself, that was something that I was still learning.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really hard to identify the individual that had all of these components that I didn't have
Sure.
in order to sit in, that chair and
Sure.
drive.
Stick in front of the computer and just maintain calendars
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Right.
So, but finding people that were actually arborists, was that any challenge at all?
I would say that it can be a challenge, yes, because there's different arborists have different skill sets across the board. So we range in skills from, people that are really skilled at pruning and, mechanical tree work,
Sure.
to people that are really skilled in the diagnosis category. And, there's diagnosing trees is a difficult thing to do, and
Okay.
someone doesn't just start doing that
Okay.
after a few years of working with trees. Usually it's, what feels like a lifetime of working with
Sure.
trees.
So I want to talk a little bit about that. What
Mhm.
type of an education is typical for an employee or for a business owner even in the arborist world?
Well, as far as business owners, I know there's business owners that have, natural resource or green companies that have zero experience. They just
Okay.
hire all of their
Sure.
experience.
Okay. Fair.
But as far as employees go, what I look for is someone that has a basic understanding of plant knowledge. So someone has
Okay.
to be able to initially be able to identify trees. And we call that dendrology.
All right.
So if you don't have good dendrology skills, that's the base language that I use to train.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
if you don't if I have to train someone what, all different species, et cetera, are, that's a lot longer of a training window than
Sure.
if they know that part, I can teach them the rest.
All right. So how does the interview go then? You just take them outside in your parking lot and say, tell me some
I
trees?
should. Usually I will take a look at their resume and the classwork that they've taken.
Okay.
And if they've been in the green industry for a while, likely I know of them
Sure.
or know who they've worked with.
Okay. So that's a fairly small world in the community.
It is.
All right. So word gets around whether you're good or bad or
Yes.
not.
Absolutely.
All right. This all kinds of regulations just surprise me from all different types of industries. So is this industry specifically fairly regulated or not at all or
It's starting to be.
starting to be? Okay.
Unfortunately, anyone that has a chainsaw and a truck can say they take care of trees.
Interesting. Okay.
So, there's some checkpoints. Like, there's becoming a certified arborist, which is
Okay.
kind of like the very base level
Okay.
understanding, your tree biology and understanding what happens when you make certain cuts
Sure.
and how to be safe.
Okay. Where does that
and
certification come from?
The International Society of Arboriculture.
Holy cow. All right.
Arboriculture is the fancy term for tree care.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that is a absolute minimum requirement. People
Okay.
should not be letting a human touch their plants
All right.
if they at least don't have that certification.
Well, that's very good to know. So is that something that when your employees or potential employees come to you, they already have that?
Ideally, if they don't, then we will make sure that they have the experience to be able to become certified arborists.
Okay.
And then we'll certify them.
Gotcha. And is that like the state bar, or is that like just point to the leaf, or how bad of a test is this?
In my opinion, it's too easy.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's not bad.
Okay.
And there's no reason that everyone that works with trees should not have that certification.
Gotcha. Okay. And is that something that you have to renew every once in a while?
It is, and that is where it really shines, is that we do need continuing education credits. So
Okay.
if someone has the certification, then a property owner knows that they are at least aware of, newer techniques
All right.
/ problems that are out there.
All right. And do they get some type of a certification number, or how do you know? Okay.
Absolutely, they do, and they're also listed on the. There's a local chapter for the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Arborist Association,
Okay.
and that is a really good site to be able to go and pull names from in order to find somebody who is certified. And
All right.
it also gives the specifications. So if they're consulting arborists or they are just prune and remove trees.
Sure.
It kind of defines the company a little bit for the consumer.
All right. All right. That's very helpful. Stuff I imagine people learn after the fact, maybe too late sometimes.
Yep,
All right.
often.
So what have you learned from working with your employees? I imagine you get people from all walks of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all different experiences.
I have learned that
I'm going on the presumption that you learned something from
I've
them.
learned a few things. I've learned that I've become more skilled at not reacting to situations immediately.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So,
Tell me about that.
So just listening to, when there's a problem or something happens out in the field, not coming to the assumption, to any assumptions until really, one, you have the whole story, and two, you're over any type of emotion you have
Sure.
due to the situation, so that you can speak with someone
Mm-hmm.
without putting them in a defensive position, because ultimately you want your employees to stay with you.
That's the goal. Yeah.
And
you didn't hire them
and
to
no
fire
one
'em.
no one wants to get screamed at, especially when the whole story isn't out. So I think for me, that was one of the harder parts, is just making sure that I have all of the pieces to the puzzle so that I can react in the most appropriate way.
Sure. Interesting. Do you have any examples?
Oh, geez.
There's bound to be one that you learned way more than you expected to, and it cost you a little bit more than you wanted it to.
It's true. Yes, I had a situation where I did have employees that, and granted, I did not have a manual for planting trees, but they weren't aware of some simple steps that I had assumed that they were aware of.
Sure.
When
That's where it always starts, right?
mhm.
How do you not know this?
Right. So I unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to find out that, they had been proceeding in the manner that they had been proceeding in until it was too late, and it did cost me a bunch of money.
Uh-huh.
And then my initial reaction, of course, was, I was,
Throwing chairs and yelling?
well, I don't really throw chairs, but sometimes I do yell.
Sure.
And I took a step back and really thought about where we went wrong in not
Sure.
being able to explain. So, it's about making sure it doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to the point where I think the first time that somebody happens, it's like, well, your manual just has to get thicker and thicker.
Right.
And now I get it. Whenever I used to see really long employee manuals
Mm-hmm.
or SOPs, it was, It's just obnoxious when you're an employee.
Sure.
But
You
when
want
you
me to read this tome?
when you understand that everything is in there because likely it happened and it's a result of preventing, something from happening and having people just trust in that
Sure.
is it's a good thing.
So is this something that they should have learned in school or through certification, or is this just a way that you do things that's better?
No, I would have thought they knew it.
Okay.
But they didn't. And,
All right.
So it was an assumption on my part, and it wasn't in our manual, so now
Sure.
it is.
All right. And it all comes down to management, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always think of Sinead O'Connor and her song, Nothing Compares to You.
Oh, I
And
love
she says, "Where did I go wrong?" Every time I have an employee mess up, I'm like, okay, it comes down to management. And then Sinead O'Connor's in my head, and that doesn't make things necessarily better.
Oh, come on.
But, well, once in your head is fine, but Sinead does not stay in your head for a moment. It's typically a week or more. What is a challenge that you were still trying to overcome with your business?
I would say just the seasonality of it.
Oh, how are you
so-
going to challenge? How are you going to overcome that?
Well, trying to make sure that people are trained on lots of different levels
Okay.
so that they can be fit into different spots,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a really... You're right. I can't overcome seasonality.
You
in
solve
general.
winter. We got to.
But there's certain ways that you can make it better.
Okay.
And for instance, if I send crews out
Mm-hmm.
and you get all the way to a job on the west side of Madison, we're on the east side of Madison.
Sure.
On the west side of Madison, and you can't complete the work because there's a layer of ice on the trees and they're not able to be climbed.
All right.
So then everyone comes all the way back.
Sure.
And that's time and materials.
Hours,
out.
gas, mileage,
Mhm.
people. Sure.
Mm-hmm. So just learning how and when those conditions, when to call it,
Sure.
and all the different things to think about. There's a lot more to think about in winter.
Sure.
To understand that if you have an 8-hour job,
Mm-hmm.
likely you're only going to get 5 to 6 hours of that complete, and it's going to require a second trip if it's done in winter because it's
Sure.
so cold. People just can't move the same. Trucks don't start the same.
Right.
So there's a lot of elements to deal with.
Sure. I was talking with a guy that does siding, and he does siding all year round, even when it was 10 below or 15 below, whatever, just a few weeks ago. And I was thinking, how does siding just not crack when it's 10 below?
Right.
When it's 10 or 12 feet long, like they were just pushing it all year long, and you can't possibly be as productive in January with temperatures like that as you are in June when it's just the most gorgeous day in the world.
Right.
Right. So I totally understand that. I always like to learn about two things from people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, three things really. One is your leadership style. One is how you deal with employees in regards to hiring and firing. And then the other is decision making. So do you mind if we run through those?
Sure.
All right. Let's start with leadership. So you start your business knowing that eventually you'll build up to the point where you have employees.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, I suppose, when you have partners, you have to take a leadership role, or
So you
somebody
don't
has
even
to, right?
think that far ahead and you start your business.
Sure, there's that. There's that. So what have you found to be some things that have really worked for you in regards to leadership skills?
Well, I think giving educational opportunities has been huge. And for us, one other big part that we notice is that we need to have really consistent team meetings.
Interesting. Okay.
So everybody needs to touch base. And when our crews don't touch base, and it definitely falls off a little bit in slow season versus
Sure.
high season.
Sure.
But when we're in high season, we need to take that time out and make sure that we are meeting and talking every week, or
All right.
issues / things that could easily be fixed if they had an opportunity to bring them up in an open forum
Sure.
would not be, and they kind of snowball into something that's bigger. So
All right. So these are in person?
yes,
Okay, and just at your shop in the
person,
morning or
yes.
something like that?
that's right.
All right. And are they hour or two, or are they just 5-minute powwows?
They usually, so they're scheduled for an hour.
Okay.
But we've had them last 2.5 hours in the past, depending
wow.
on
Sure.
what's going on and if something needs to be covered. And
Sure.
it's really difficult to take that time out for every member out of every member's schedule and not just get people out the door, but it ends up actually saving
Sure.
time.
It's the opportunity cost, right? The cost for doing it versus the cost of not doing it.
That's right.
What are you risking?
That's an easy thing to overlook when you're a new business owner because you haven't learned through trial and tribulation that that's needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can tell you with Calls on Call that we have that same issue.
Mm-hmm.
That it's one of those, like, we got to get people in there and just chat and try to figure out a time when everybody's there and available to talk about the problems that nobody's really talking about.
Yep.
And you only discover those problems by asking questions, simple like, how's this going or how's that going? And employees will say something like, oh, by the way.
Right.
Which I always feel then like Dr. Evil and Austin Powers when I'm like, I'm the boss, need the info.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, why haven't you told me this? What? And it was just one of those things where it just didn't dawn on them that it was that big of a deal.
Right.
Or maybe it was one of those things where it was just a ball that got dropped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got their hundreds, if not thousands of balls in the air.
Right.
Sooner or later, they're going to get dropped. And
And that's one thing that we do in our team meetings is everyone gets the floor.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
if you have nothing to say, then you have nothing to say, but the ball is going to come around to you.
Okay.
And you're going to have the opportunity to say something and everybody will listen to you. So
You pass a literal ball?
no.
No, okay. Okay.
We don't.
Stuffed animal
It's
or
not
something.
a terrible idea.
Okay. You have the floor. All right. So then tell me about your hiring process, because that's always a big thing, especially now when employees are on the verge of rare,
Right.
or at least difficult to find.
Mm-hmm.
And though there's a decent sized pool that may be looking for work, sometimes it's hard to find someone that's the exact fit, right?
Right. So our hiring process has been under constant evolution
Okay.
in that it started with me looking at a resume saying, wow, that sounds great.
You're hired. Fog this mirror.
Right. And I've definitely noticed that just because a resume says certain things doesn't mean that there's a skill set out in the field.
Sure.
And so now we have several interviews.
Okay.
Several in-person interviews.
Okay. By several, we're talking 3, 7?
Usually 3.
Okay.
And we also do personality profiles.
Do you use DISC or what do you use?
Yes, we use DISC.
Okay.
And that's proved extremely helpful because
Nice.
we're able to know kind of what we're missing on our team and match it to those profiles. And I almost find those profiles eerie sometimes. And Nathan and I took ours too, and we laughed about each other's because I'd look at mine and be like, I don't do that. He'd be like, yes, you do.
Crazy high D, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy high D right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love that. Nathan, where does Nathan fall in there?
Nathan is a high S.
Okay.
And he has quite a bit of C in him.
Sure.
So.
Interesting. Do you have any
No,
C
actually,
at all?
he's a very high I too.
Okay. Do you have C?
I'm not super high, but yes, I do have C.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I'm actually also a very high I.
So if someone were to come to you and they were good in every other area, but they were crazy high D, would you say no?
I've never had a high D apply.
Really? Interesting. They're out just ruling the world some other way.
My thing is to hire high Is.
Okay. All right.
So, and that I'm not allowed no more.
Sure.
Because the
It's just a
office
party,
chats
man.
it's just too much fun.
Sure.
But yes, just having a balance between personality types. I wouldn't want all of anyone.
Sure.
Just having enough that covers the spectrum.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So where do you go to find your employees?
Well, I think we'll often advertise with the UW.
Okay.
And mostly it's through word of mouth.
Okay.
So it's letting people know we're looking,
Sure.
networking groups.
Do people major in arboriculture?
Arboriculture? They do. So there are some tech schools that they have career fairs.
Really? Okay.
So those are places. We also attend conferences.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great place to look for new students, etc.
Sure. Nice. I'm always curious how competition is in a given realm with a given industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some industries competition is brutal, cutthroat.
Mm-hmm.
Other industries, I swear to God, people hold hands and go for wine all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how is competition with the arborist world?
Well, I mean, there's like 150 tree care companies in the phone
Is
book.
there really?
But there's...
I haven't looked at a phone book in a while.
Yeah.
So.
I don't feel... I mean, there's a ton of... It's a saturated market for sure.
Really?
But there's really, in my opinion, not a lot of people that put together tree care and how to do consulting and understand tree risk and diagnoses. We consider ourselves kind of on a different level as far as health management for trees.
Sure.
I mean, I have 15 years in diagnosing and treating disease and insect issues.
Okay. Where other people would just say, cut it down?
Well, that, or they might take a stab at it knowing that there's certain things out there.
Sure.
You know, like, well, I can spray it with an insecticide.
Sure, let's
hopefully
just
that
roll
works.
the dice. All right.
Right. But we actually have the knowledge to have successful tree treatments.
Nice. Has that been difficult to market?
Not thus far.
No? Okay.
I mean, I think we're mostly a word of mouth referral.
All right. Very interesting.
Market business.
Sure.
But we're really, like I said, our ideal client is someone who wants to care for their trees, and most of our clients are extremely educated.
Really?
So they know a lot about their trees, and they have, possibly been through a gamut of different types of treatment protocols, etc.
All right.
So we work a lot on management plans, and when we come out to someone's property, the first time that we come out, we spend an hour to 2 hours educating our client on every tree species that they have and problems that it might encounter, how to care for them.
Okay.
And that's outside of any type of work and or treatments that they need. It's just getting them to understand the ecology that they're working with and how to proceed in the future and care.
So you got to help me understand this, because again, with printer repair, right, you fix your printer and then it works. With a tree or a living thing, it's not exactly a light switch, right? Like you go through a process of healing it, repairing it, changing it, and outside of cutting it down, it's going to take time for that tree to work with what you've offered it, right?
Yes.
To kind of grow and adapt and improve.
Right.
So how long does it typically take, and how do you know? Like, do you visit again, or do you trust that it works?
Usually we visit our clients at least yearly.
Okay.
Some of our clients, we're on their properties 4 or 5 times a year.
Are you really?
But it depends on what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a tree that simply had its root system severed because of a construction project, and it started to grow slow in growth, and it's attracting secondary insects because essentially it's wounded.
Sure.
Then we have kind of a multi-step process. So, we have to first of all stop the immediate threat, which would be a secondary insect that would kill the tree.
Sure.
And then we have to decide how we're going to regenerate that root system and make sure that the tree stays safe.
All right.
So one step of our success might be, okay, the insects are gone.
All right.
Great. So now we want to see that tree is growing properly. And we want to make sure, because you can actually visually measure how much a tree is growing each year and compare that to what it should be growing. Okay.
Just taking the circumference?
No. You can see how the twigs elongate. How
much
elongation that they have. Yep. We have lots of devices also to actually measure nutritional content that's getting up into the leaf surface. Okay. So a lot of times you can measure the soil, and you can know how many nutrients, etc., are in the soil, but you don't know actually how many are translating inside of the tree. Okay. So there's a lot of different things depending on where the tree is at. If we have a tree that simply had an insect issue and is growing great and able to process nutrition, etc., then it might be the case where we just get rid of that insect. Interesting. We had an outbreak of magnolia scale for the past few years in Madison, and if caught on time, treatments are really effective. The magnolia scale goes away, and that's it.
All right. Huh. Interesting. So let's move to decision making. You're business owners. You must be making decisions all the time, good, bad, and different. So can you tell me about a time that you have made a bad decision that if you had a chance to, you would change it? Put you on the spot here.
Let's see. A bad decision.
Going again on the presumption that you've made at least one bad decision before.
Sure. There was, so when we first found out about emerald ash borer, there were in particular, there was one company that responded almost immediately to protocol for that. Okay. Which then they kind of took the market because they were the first and fastest.
Sure.
and their treatment protocols utilized equipment that was, according to them, didn't damage the tree.
Mm-hmm.
But we had some misgivings about it.
Sure. Okay.
So we used that system, and it works. It worked. But ideally, we would have chosen a different system, one that wasn't quite as invasive and destructive to the tree.
Gotcha.
And when the new system came out, I really wish that we would have employed that earlier.
Sure.
in our protocols. But I wanted to, the first one was tried, tested, and true. So
Sure.
I had waited, and we're happy now that we're able to switch those trees over to the new kinds of treatments.
Okay.
But really, I think, just making sure that we're making decisions that are quick when we do have new technology.
Sure.
And making sure they're right, too, because sometimes diving into new technology might be too soon as well.
Fair. Totally fair. Yeah, you don't know. I guess, again, it comes back to the tree doesn't respond immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't know until time has passed.
Right.
How do you typically make decisions that are bigger? Say if you're expanding, adding a truck, adding an employee, something of that nature?
Usually, once again, then it comes down to the team.
Okay.
And I don't like to make those decisions individually. I will run them by my team members, and we also are advocates of having coaches.
Okay.
So working with business coaches, I think, is
Yay.
right. It's a great way to run something past someone who doesn't have any ties or preconceptions.
Sure.
The same ones that you do anyway, and
Sure.
might have a fresh perspective.
Right.
And looking at your numbers and or
Mm-hmm.
your business and making suggestions that you wouldn't think of.
Sure. That makes sense. That's very
Mm-hmm.
good. Very good. So how do it sounds like your employees then have a say,
Most certainly.
or at least
Most
a voice.
certainly.
Maybe
Mhm.
it's not entirely democratic,
Yeah, and
but
it's not entirely democratic. It couldn't be, or we'd have like 3 different trucks per each employee functioning in different ways. But I mean, ultimately, if we were looking at buying a piece of equipment, we want their input. We want to
Sure.
make sure they're the ones using it.
sure, that's fair.
So
Totally fair.
the whole idea is to make them more productive and faster and better.
Sure.
So if it's not going to do that, then I'd rather not make that purchase.
Sure. Do your people typically go out in a team, or are they one-on-one, or?
It's across the board. It depends on what they're doing and when. Like most plant healthcare treatments for trees
Mm-hmm.
are just a single person,
Okay.
because it's not a two person job.
Gotcha.
But for instance, if anyone's ever climbing, there has
Mhm.
to be 2 people on site.
Like by some type of regulation?
Correct.
Okay.
OSHA regulations.
OSHA,
Anytime you're
okay.
up in a tree, there has to be a second person there.
Interesting. All right. So I'm sure people love hearing about climbing trees because I'm intrigued by it, especially when you're looking at a weeping willow or something like that that's insanely high. I'm
Mhm.
not even going to guess how high. But I just see this mess of branches, and somebody's got to go up there and cut it down. And what are the regulations as far as attaching yourself to something that you're essentially cutting down eventually?
There's lots of regulations.
Okay. Just give me an idea.
So in the past, people used to do things like spike up trees, like where,
Okay. Where spikes on your shoes?
Right.
Okay.
and now we have regulations that don't allow that for living trees.
Okay.
Climbers, people don't just get up in a tree and climb. It takes many, many years of working on the ground,
Sure.
etc. So it's not something that you would just start doing in a season.
Okay.
And there's a lot to know about tree biology and understanding.
Sure.
If the point you just tied into is safe.
Okay. What can support weight and what cannot?
Right.
Okay.
But ultimately, the ANSI standards are pretty extensive as far as what we do in the types of cuts that we can make and
Okay.
what we should do and
Sure.
what's suggested, etc.
Interesting. Can insurance be a challenge?
Insurance in lots of different ways can be a challenge.
Okay. Is it obnoxiously expensive, like a roofer kind of thing, or is the safety protocol so high that's essentially a non-issue?
No, our workman's comp for climbers is very, very high
Interesting. Okay.
and similar to roofers.
Okay.
But then depending on how high someone's going to be off the ground, etc., you can put them in different classes.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Then they know how far they can
Right.
drop.
Right.
That's awesome. Uh, oh my goodness gracious! I have so many questions for you. I'm trying to figure out what the next best one is. What is the most expensive mistake that you've ever made in business?
Oh, the most expensive mistake.
Mm-hmm. Could be a hire, could be a truck, could be driving a truck with a new hire through a
All
house.
of those things. Yep, I would say we had an accident once. One of our employees did, and was not truthful about how that accident occurred.
Like a truck accident?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it was not covered by insurance because it was considered a mechanical issue
Oh.
rather than driver error, when indeed it was actually driver error. But it was a truck tip over, and that was a pretty expensive error.
Truck tip over.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that'd be lots of dollars.
Lots of dollars.
All right. So how did that conversation go?
That conversation went well. The employee is no longer with us.
Okay. You'll have that.
But now, depending on, I think really it was a matter of, that was where we started to revamp our hiring process.
Interesting. Okay. So
And make sure that driving records were checked.
Sure.
And also that we had responsible individuals behind the wheel.
Okay. All right. So some of the trucks you have are bigger. Do they have air brakes?
No.
They do
None of
not.
our trucks
Okay.
have air
So
brakes.
CDL does not come into play?
Nope.
Okay. You have bucket trucks and all that kind of stuff?
We have dump trucks. We do not have bucket trucks.
Gotcha. Okay.
Climb everything.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Is
So-
that by design?
Well, I mean, there's rare occasions where bucket trucks are needed.
Okay.
But it's rare. Most of the time you can't make a proper tree cut from the angle that you get just from a truck.
Interesting.
It requires a climber to actually be up and over the limb in order to
Sure.
get the angle of cut that you need. But when a bucket truck is needed, then we will bring in contractors.
Gotcha. All right. Do you work with other tree care companies if you get some
All the time.
huge job?
Well, if we get a larger job, but also we work with other tree care companies in we're able to bring them a level of expertise as far as tree risk analysis
Sure.
and healthcare treatments that they may not otherwise have access to.
Okay. Nice. What is your busiest month?
Our busiest month, it's usually, well, it depends on when things warm up.
Sure.
So it'll be a toss-up between May
So
and
February. Right, if we keep this pace up.
June. It's coming. It's coming.
Sure. All right. May and June. All right. Who do you consider to be someone that you look up to in the business world?
Let's see. Well, there's a lot of consulting arborists, so I'm part of a group called the American Society of Consulting Arborists,
Okay.
and we are a group of kind of top tier arborists in the country, and
All right.
some of the greatest talent. So the people that wrote the book on arboriculture and law,
Sure.
and how that all works, and they're doing cutting edge research on different types of tree treatments and experiments out in the field.
Interesting.
Mhm.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Do you read any business books?
Business books.
Or do you read any books? Let's start there.
Yeah, I do. Usually they have something to do with natural resources and or trees.
Okay.
Business books, I think if I would call them business/self-help books. So a lot of
Perfect.
books on like leadership,
Sure.
etc.
Do you have a favorite?
Let's see. Well, I do like Stephen Covey's, well, just about anything.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
So 7 Habits.
The 4-Hour Work Week was pretty good.
Great book. Yep.
Leadership and the Art of Deception. I
All
liked
right.
that one quite a bit.
Interesting. I have to check that one out.
I have-
Leadership and the Art of Deception.
Yeah,
All right. That's
I
a
think
fair
that's
name.
what it's called.
All right. Nice. Nice. So let's just take Stephen Covey here, right, with 7
Mhm.
Habits. So did any of that, what have you changed after reading a book like that?
That was a long time ago.
It was a very long time. It's an old book. Oldie but a goodie. Or let's take even the 4-Hour Work Week.
Let's see. What have I changed? I think for the most part, well, and there's another version that I use the default calendar and making sure that I'm allotting the time that I'm allotting to work
Sure.
is used for what makes me the most money.
Perfect. Perfect. So you got your working time and then the non-working time.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. And you use typically like a Google Calendar?
I use Microsoft Outlook.
Okay.
So we use the exchange between us all because it's an easy forum and so we have a server that
Sure.
everyone can jump onto, so we can, I suppose just about any platform allows for calendar sharing, etc.
Sure.
That one
Sure.
works great for us though.
Gotcha. And how rigid or religiously do you actually go by your calendar? If something says that it's at, let's say, 1:15 or something like that, and it ends at 4, is it 1:15 to 4?
I try to be within 10 minutes of it.
Okay. All right. All right. I imagine with just the nature of the work, there's going to be some gray area in times, right? All right. Well, let me back up a step. Do you actually go out in the field, or are you leading the people that are in the field?
I do all of the consulting and sales.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
I'm rarely out in the field. I love to be out in the field.
Okay.
And I don't even really lead the people in the field anymore. Nathan as general manager does most of our takes care of most of our field staff.
All right. So you have an easy job, right?
Easy.
All you have to do is run a business. That's all you have to do. That's fantastic. So do you okay, so 4-hour work week, we got 7 habits, and what was the other one? Leadership?
And the art of deception. I believe that's what it's called.
So tell me about that book. I'm intrigued here.
It's really about it's different perspectives on really how to view yourself in your interactions with other people.
Okay.
So for me, it was a lot of learning opportunities in just the way that we perceive situations and how we react to them and what we invite into our lives.
All right. Can you give me an example?
The reactions that we have.
No. Is it mostly body language or emotional reaction?
It's mostly emotional reaction.
Okay.
So, trying to understand why people around you are reacting the way they do and understanding how your actions might be inviting them to act in the exact way that you don't want them to act.
That sounds like a perfect case for studying how people react on the Beltline.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
A whole social experiment going on in traffic right now as we speak. Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, what have you had to learn the hard way? Probably a long list, right?
Probably a long list. I think, the hiring process was one.
Sure.
Because it's always hard to have turnover. Mm-hmm. And even if someone's not a right fit, you get attached to people. And
sure.
You want to make things work. Mm-hmm. You want to be positive.
Sure.
And sometimes that's difficult when you're just not in the best situation as far as your team goes. Mm-hmm. I think really having a plan and sticking to it is I think it's more important than it feels like it is, because everyone wants to have a plan that they stick to, but it becomes really easy to have a lot of excuses and derailing events.
Absolutely.
So making sure that you do stick in and having someone to check in with, I think, is a really great thing that I learned the hard way too. Like I need coaches and I need a community around me to bounce things off of.
Sure.
And I don't think I know everything by any means. And
there was a moment that I thought I did, but I forgot to write it all down. So here I am. So you raised an interesting point about employees. So I love this question for people with employees. So would you consider your employees to be family, friends, or part of a team, or just merely transactional? They do the job you pay them.
I would say part of a team.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So with that, is there a challenge to get rid of someone when they're not performing up to the standard that you have?
Always.
Okay.
That I will lose sleep over that. It's not fun to have that type of situation.
Sure. Interesting. So what do you typically do when you have to fire someone?
Well, I think if I have to fire someone, they're somewhat aware that there's something on the horizon.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have one big review a year, and then we have check-ins along the way.
Sure.
And we have our meetings so that things can air. But one thing that's nice about having coaches is when something looks out of whack, we're going to see it.
Sure.
And when we look into it, that something points towards performance, etc., of an employee, then it becomes less personal.
Sure.
When you're taking data and you're saying, this isn't, you're not living up to the bargain here.
Right.
And then if they're aware of it and they're given a chance to change it,
Mm-hmm.
And they can't change it,
Sure.
then it's easier
Okay.
because they're aware of it. And
So you're setting up clear if-then scenarios.
Mhm.
They're aware of them,
Right.
presuming they have any intelligence at all.
Right.
Or what what I would presume to be any
Mhm.
intelligence at all.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been there where people are surprised, right?
Yep.
What? I didn't know this would happen.
Right.
Do you have a vision statement or mission statement or both?
We do. I haven't gone over them in a while.
I put you on the spot with that one, so I
You did.
apologize. It's in there somewhere. That's awesome. I apologize for that. If I were to talk to you in 3 years, right? I'm sorry, you're 6 years in. So if I was going to talk to you in 6 years,
Mhm.
where would you like your business to be in 6 years?
I would definitely. So we're working on opening a branch office this year,
Really?
to service the Door County area.
Okay.
So
lot of trees there.
Yes. I would like, in 6 years, I would like to have at least 3 branch offices.
Okay.
Working in high season.
In and around Wisconsin?
In the Midwest.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Ideally.
Okay.
And having staff that I trust to be able to be in those offices and run them,
Gotcha.
so that I don't have to be in 5 different places at once.
Sure.
That'd be great.
And what would the reasoning be for having those branch offices?
Because a lot of our work involves seasons,
Okay.
and also, protecting trees against super invasive species. And there's not a lot of companies that can do what we do
Sure.
at this point. So
Okay.
being able to reach out and save trees in those areas that's what we do.
All right. So Door County, where else would you go?
Door County, and the rest are kind of under discussion right now.
Gotcha. Okay. And is Door County mainly because there's just a huge volume of trees with not a ton of population to take care of those trees?
That's right. They have a really large population of ash trees, so that's a really
Really?
great way to be able to start the conversation
Okay.
for tree care. And I think there's it's an area that doesn't have a lot of specialized companies, so a lot of people don't understand. At least a lot of people that I've spoken to do not understand that there are options,
Sure.
and that they can keep their trees. And it'll be an area that if no one tends to, it'll be devastating.
Sure. Interesting. I was just at Door County a few months ago, and I remember thinking, there's not that many people that live here, except there's tons of people that visit there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they got, 2 major highways, essentially?
Yep.
'Cause I remember we were pretty low on gas, and I'm looking for a gas station. I'm used to being in a city where you want gas,
Right.
or you
Yep.
want a bar. It's easy, right? Just reach out your hand, you'll touch one. But in Door County,
Plan ahead.
that is not the case
Right.
at all. I'm like, man, there's only a couple highways. How can there not be a gas station around here? But it turns out there's not. So they didn't ask me years ago when they were planning the city where to put a gas station, and so there I was trying
But
to
you
figure.
had your smartphone, right?
I did, but I don't like to look at that and drive. I just
Oh,
figured
that's smart.
I'm on a highway and there's only 2 of them in this area. So if I was going to put a gas station somewhere, it'd have to be on this road, and I hit water going the other direction.
That
So
could be another venture for someone.
sure, another gas station. But I imagine there's all kinds of talk about real estate and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
That'd be venturing into something more than beyond this. But that's super cool that you're getting into that area.
Mhm.
Beautiful area
It is.
and so many trees.
So many trees.
Does that also help because essentially Madison is oversaturated with tree people, right? Trucks and chainsaws kind of thing, that it helps to venture off into areas that are not so saturated?
I guess that would be a bonus too. That's not initially. I mean, I think our market's our target market is a little bit different than a lot of tree care companies in this area.
Sure. Okay.
But overall, I guess that would be a benefit.
Okay. So what do you consider to be your target market?
Well, people that have and or want to have trees.
Okay. All right.
And, as far as what they know about trees or their current level of care, we can meet someone pretty much wherever they are.
Sure.
But if you do have trees and you call us, we're definitely going to come in with a preservation if possible type mentality.
Okay.
So if you have one tree in your backyard and you hate that tree
Sure.
because it has leaves,
Sure.
then we're probably not the people that you're going to call.
Sure. Okay.
But then again, our company name is Tree Health Management.
You didn't get into tree health because you want to cut them all down, right?
Right.
That's fair to say. Awesome. Oh, what else could you tell the listeners in regards to business? As far as what are you excited about with business? Something gets you out of bed in the morning. It's not just working, right?
Sure. I think overall it's really neat I think small business owners are in a position where they get the opportunity to change a lot. So
Okay.
we're always kind of analyzing ourselves, and we're always growing because we have to.
Okay, change themselves or change a business or change
Both.
Okay.
I mean, you are presented on a daily basis. I think your colors have to shine through a little bit more than if you just had a job.
Sure.
You know, if you're in a bad mood, etc., you don't get to just broadcast that.
Sure.
You've got to keep a team going.
Right.
And it's constantly learning how to be a better leader.
All right.
And, things that I never really thought I had to learn.
Sure. Interesting.
Now I do, or
And
I won't be effective.
And it sounds like you're liking it so far. Or
I am.
would you say loving it?
I would say loving it.
All right.
I mean, there's definitely challenges, but like I said, those are always growing opportunities
Sure.
as well.
Sure. So if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I don't know,
What would you want to do?
but this is what I want to do.
There you have it, right? From Briana telling you at Tree Health Management that trees are just where it's at, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has been just the most annoying problem for you for trees outside of emerald ash borer? Because I imagine that's a
For
plague,
trees.
right?
I would say oak wilt is a terrible disease that it's really annoying because there's certain oak trees that once they catch it, it's fatal and there's nothing we can do.
Oh,
So it really stinks telling someone there's nothing we can do.
sure. Thanks for calling us. We got to cut down your tree.
Right.
All right.
I mean, there's essentially never nothing we can do because if we do have to remove a tree, then we're going to have a whole lot of suggestions on what the homeowner can replant.
Sure. Other options and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Cool. Well, Briana, I appreciate you joining me here on the radio.
I appreciate you having me.
Did you have a good time?
I had a good time.
All right. So I apologize because this is probably going against your very core, being cooped up here in a studio with no windows. But
I'm about to go outside.
here we are. So, oh my goodness gracious. I appreciate you guys listening here. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Coming to you from the Sun Prairie Community Radio Studios, underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. I am James Kademan, business coach at Drought and Customers Business Coaching and author of the Bold Business Book. And we'd like to thank you, listeners, and our guest, Briana Frank of Tree Health Management. Briana, if they wanted to reach out to you, just tell us how we can get a hold of you. Phone number?
Our phone number is 608 21. What is our phone number?
I don't know. How about
Actually,
your website?
Let's go for website, www.treehealthmgmt.com.
MGMT, short for management. Awesome. So that's treehealthmgmt.com.
Mm-hmm.
Rock and roll. All right. Find us airing on 103.5 Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m., as well as at sunprairiemediacenter.com. We can also be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link on droughtandcustomers.com. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Stay awesome, and, of course, enjoy the process.